You came in here talking about where you came from. Did you learn how to scrap like that back home?
Yeah, kind of. A lot of it came from, of course, my mom telling me, "Don't fight back. Don't just don't get in fights." And the first time I fought back, I was like, "Yeah, that was kind of fun, Ma. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't fight back." And then she tells me about my uncle, who was a black belt, and he would get in scraps. And then apparently, all this came from my mom. My dad was a pacifist, and then my mom, she claimed to be a pacifist, but the only thing she did was pacifist across my face.
Have you used that one before? That's a pretty good one.
Nah, dude, that was slick, wasn't it?
Yeah, I like that. I might have to steal that one for future. Does your mom still follow your career?
Absolutely. After every fight, I always, I do my mandatories. But whenever I get a second, I call my mom. My mom doesn't watch me fight live because she's afraid of it. Like, she went to one Taekwondo tournament when I was a kid, and she goes, "Never again. Never again." I said, "Why?" She goes, "Because that's my baby beating up on somebody else's baby, or it's somebody else's baby beating up on my baby." So I was like, she goes, "I'm not going to watch that. You call me afterwards. Let me know you're okay, and we'll be all right." There's a photo that I have of one of my fights in Japan where I TKO'd somebody, and it's a pretty cool photo. I have my arm up like this, like the famous Muhammad Ali picture. And what my mom did is she got it framed, but she blacked out the opponent. And I said, "Ma, why'd you do that? That's part of the fight." She goes, "That's somebody's baby right there. I want to celebrate your victory. I don't want to celebrate somebody else's downfall." And I was like, "Well, that makes sense. That makes sense, Ma." And and it carried with me. I appreciate that my mom taught me that lesson so far, into life. And whenever I see somebody or, somebody that maybe I'm beefing with or whatever, and, we're all fighters here. We're all trying to get, into a certain place, with our lives and everything. And, it's funny because, I don't want to bring up old wounds, but, Javid Basharat, he just, he lost his last fight against Ricky Simon. And people are hitting me up on Instagram. "Oh, hey, that was for you. That was for you." I was like, "No, Basharat, he went out there and he bared his soul and his fight and his life for all of us. He's trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do. I'm not going to celebrate in his downfall. What I will celebrate is Ricky Simon coming off that how many fight lose streak? 3, 4?
Something like that.
Yeah, and going out there and securing his future in an exciting way. We're all martial artists. We're all trying to do this. We're all trying to build a life for ourselves, and so I'm not going to celebrate somebody's downfall. I want to celebrate somebody's victory. And I could be hateful in my own way, but it's not going to be that way.
That's incredible mindset that's coming from mom, down the line, and that's great that you picked up on that. Does she still go back and watch your fights eventually after the fact and give you any sort of tips, or is she just glad that you came out unscathed for the most part?
She will only watch fights if I'm sitting next to her.
Yeah.
Because that way she grabs me, she goes, and I got long hair. She starts pulling it and everything. I was like, "Ma, what are you doing?" She'll do that because she'll like, "What are you? I'm sitting right next to you. It's all right." She goes, "Nah, but why are you gonna let somebody hit you in the face like that?" I was like, "Well, Ma, I didn't let him. I just didn't see the punch coming. That's why it hit me." But yeah, she's my mom and my dad. They, my dad will just sit there just. "Estaba bien, mijo. Estaba bien." "Ay, no mames, mijo. No mames." So.
That's incredible. Well, you took some shots tonight, but you actually gave some shots, some pretty good shots out there. How happy are you overall with your performance?
7 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10. There's some spots where I was like, man, I could have finished it here, or, of course, hindsight. What did they say?
Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, hindsight's 20/20. There's some spots in there where I could have done more here. I could have done more there.
Sure.
After dropping him in the first round. Even though he was, trying to invert, trying to throw something in, I wasn't really committing to my shots because I didn't want him to throw up triangles because I know he was looking for them. He's third-degree black belt, really good too. And, there were things where I was like, well, even in the third round where I was like, dang, he got me down. Man, I really need a fight because I don't want to just give him this round. But then when I turned around and even in his guard, my coach was like, man, why didn't you just start just blasting him there? And I was like, man, I didn't want to speak it into existence, but my arms were dead. Yeah. There were some spots in there where I was like, man, I was looking for a good left hook. I just couldn't find the timing for it, or I couldn't find the accuracy to it for it. And for me, if I'm not throwing it well, I'm not throwing it at all. I'm not gonna wing something stupid and get countered off of it. So there are things where I was just like, well, I could, so from now I'm just gonna think, hey, like, remember what it felt like in this moment, and then go for it from there. So in training, I have to, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, get to what it felt like. Remember what it felt like. Apply it during training, because if you could do it during training, well, then you'll be all right here.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of weird. It's such a catch-22 because you have those moments out there where somebody hurts somebody and then they go chasing for the finish and they get caught with something. So here your brain was like, no, don't rush in things, and let alone things a black belt. You're like, don't leave your arms out there, and especially if your arms are tired.
Yeah.
So now it's like I want to go back and be able to push forward, but it's like, well, your brain was telling you to slow down for a reason. It's tough. It really is a tough decision.
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes your own brain is basically telling you to be a coward. So there is that where you have to find what's correct, even though your brain is telling you don't go. Sometimes you have to go, but then sometimes your brain is 100% correct. Don't go because you run into something dumb.
Yeah.
But that's the philosophy of life. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. In my previous fight before this over in Canada, my mind told me, hey, take him down off this angle over here, because I know he's going to go for a guillotine, but you're going to be fine because you're going to be in side control. Sure enough, he slapped up that guillotine, and he didn't traditionally wrap it. He had it like on a prayer style, and I couldn't fight the hands. It was one of those times where I shouldn't have went, but, and he caught me, and it was good. And I rationalized that by saying, you know what, I lost on purpose because Canada was going to tax me no matter what. So if I would have won, they would have taken less. So that's how I rationalized it in my head. I don't want to give them more of my American money.
I like the way you think. So was there anything besides he was definitely very tough. He ate some good shots. Did he surprise you with anything out there?
You know what? I think the only thing I was really surprised with is he was trying to calf kick me a little bit more. Okay. There was one where I wanted to do like the Jeet Kune Do lunging 1-2 pop pop, really quick, and as I was coming forward, he just blasted that calf kick, and it stopped me. And since I had momentum going forward, I was like, oh dang, that got me a little bit, and it stung. It stung me a little bit, but props to him, man. That mustache gives him powers, because I was trying to knock that thing to the back of his head, and he was right there with me the entire time. And even though he was willing to trade with me.
Yep.
He was catching the negative on most of those things, and his shots became bigger and bigger and bigger. But you know me, man. I'm a second and third round fighter. I start trying to just move and be slick with it, and I just let my hands go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and we always know that you're willing to go forward and you're gonna throw those hands. But what was the overall game plan coming in here tonight for him?
Like I said, punch his mustache to the back of his head.
That's a great. So what do you do next? Do you give yourself a little bit of time to reflect on this, enjoy the win before you go back in the gym? Or are you back in the gym on Monday and trying to get back in here soon?
Well, I have to say I'm going to take a 12-day vacation because the state of Nevada told me to relax. But I'm probably going to be at the gym, probably going to be helping my fellow teammates get ready for their fights. Probably. Allegedly. Just no contact, all that stuff. Just no contact.
And when you do get back in there, any names that make sense? And how many more times are you hoping to fight this year?
Well, the UFC has a habit of having me fight, 2 times a year. The first quarter and the last quarter of the year. I'd like to, hopefully resign, get another contract.
Was this your last fight?
This was not my last. This is my third fight. This is my third fight. I have one more fight on the contract. Okay. So I'd like to get 2 more this year, and and then 3 more next year. I'm I said this in previous interviews. I'm part of a funny generation where, I'm in my 30s to 40s. I look like, other than this hairline, I look like I'm in my 20s to 30s, but I feel like I'm in my 80s to 90s. I sneeze in my sleep, and all of a sudden I wake up and I was like, why does my ankle hurt? But that's just life of a martial artist, and I have obligations as a martial artist and a leader in the gym.
Yep.
This taking long vacations, and that's not me. My dad, I met her a long time ago. My dad had really bad, real invasive ankle surgery because he would wake up punching his ankle because he was so much in pain, and he was basically out of commission for like a month or 2, and then as soon as he was like, hey, you can go to work, he took his 1972 Beetle manual transmission from Southgate, which is L.A. County, from Southgate to San Diego every day because he had to. He was like, Mijo, I have to go to work. So I was like, okay, yeah, you're going to, and he's shifting and shifting in all that traffic, and that stuck with me. I have to go to work. I have to go do something. Sitting at home doing nothing, that ain't for me. I gotta go help. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. In the words of my dad, Mijo, ponte a trabajar, güey.
I think your parents could be proud. You definitely took some great qualities from your parents. I don't know if you've ever thanked them for those qualities.
Absolutely not. I can't let them know they did a good job. I refuse, because then they're right. And then what's all the teenage rebellion for?
Yeah. Oh, you're still in the teenage rebellion phase
Absolutely,
as well.
dude. Come on now. It's not a phase, Mom.
I love it. Congratulations on the victory, man.
Thank you very much.